primary you. I'm going to be breaking off with procedural voters. They were inadvertently making targets and advocates of pro-ICE vote. So she is somebody who's saying if you're for ICE, if you don't go along with the program, that she's going to look to get people together to primary you. You're not in Congress anymore, but right. you be a candidate to be primaried.
Well, I do think getting rid of ICE is bad policy. Right. So I can't really comment on what's going on in the House now. I'm not in the House anymore. I didn't run for re-election so that I could dedicate myself fully.
But you know that has a lot to do with the party. Kamala Harris said the same thing.
But I think the party obviously is we're kind of going through a big discussion. My sense is the Democratic Party, when I go and talk to voters, right, I've done 24 trips to Iowa, New Hampshire. Or 24 to Iowa, 14 to New Hampshire. When I talk to voters on the ground there, they're not nearly as divided as people think they are. In fact, in Iowa, they just did a poll 2 weeks ago, and they asked Iowa caucus goers, Democratic caucus goers, do you want a nominee who will work with Republicans and get things done, or do you want someone who will stick rigidly to their ideological beliefs? It was 86-4. That tells you where the primary voters are.
I agree with you. And also, you could say
that's where Americans are.
You could say where the Tea Party pushed Republicans 8 years ago. You could say many on the left are pushing Democrats now. When you see some of the so-called front runners with the biggest names who say free preschool, free college, and make statements like Senator Elizabeth Warren when she came out and said the rich are freeloaders. Well, you are a self-made success story. Are you a freeloader?
Listen, I'm self-made in one context, but I'm also not self-made in other ways, right? You know, my dad was an electrician. His union paid for me to go to college, or gave me a scholarship to go to college, right? So a bunch of electricians helped me go to college, right? So in many ways, no one is really self-made in this country. I used to drive home from the Capitol every day to my house in Maryland, cross the Memorial Bridge, look out at Arlington Cemetery, and then that reminds you that we're all in this together, the sacrifices some people have made. But some of those are good policies. Listen, pre-K, universal pre-K, which I support, that's actually smart policy. And in many ways, it's conservative policy. Because kids who get pre-K, if you look at how they perform across the rest of their educational experience, it's the best investment we make.
But, John, that's fine. But you want Washington deciding what should be done in North Dakota pre-K?
I would like Washington to create incentives for North Dakota to offer pre-K, right? Washington can't tell North Dakota to offer pre-K, but they can create incentives for North Dakota to create universal pre-K. That's the way you do it.
The Washington Post, Jenna Rubin, does a column and calls you the smartest candidate, the smartest presidential candidate that you've never heard of. What's your reaction to that?
Well, we got to work on the second half. Right.
But you like the first half.
Well, you know, listen, I think Jennifer Rubin is a very astute columnist. We had a great conversation. We talked about issues. Right. She asked me what I think of the fiscal trajectory of the country. I told her. We talked about what we should do about climate change, which I think we should innovate our way out of the problem.
Like so you don't think we should? You don't think we should make cows old news for get rid of planes?
I think we should put a tax on carbon. Right. And I introduced the only bipartisan carbon tax bill in the Congress. We put a tax on carbon and we take all the money and we give it back to the American people. So it changes behavior. And then what I want to do is invest in innovation. Because we can innovate our way out of this problem just the same way we have innovated our way out of so many other problems.
I guess it depends how you do it. When you see Solyndra, you as a businessman must be a little taken aback.
But here's an example, like negative emissions technologies. And this is something you guys should be talking about. These are machines that actually take carbon out of the atmosphere.
Right.
They exist today. The problem is they're really expensive. If we created a market for them,
do that.
Just like we did with wind and solar. You know how the prices came down because we created a market?
Right.
If we do the same thing with this, the American economy will innovate our way out of this problem.
Great to see you, John. Great to meet you in person. All right, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Straight ahead, National Security Advisor John Bolton sending a warning to North Korea. Get rid of your nukes or more sanctions are coming. He joins us
on the chilly side. John, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Glad to be with you.
Hey, what's going on with North Korea? It looks like, according to satellite imagery, like they're rebuilding something. And that's not good, the president says.
Right. He said yesterday he was very, very disappointed about it. He said also quite correctly, it's early. We have other kinds of information other than the commercial imagery. But, you know, look, the president spent hours with Kim Jong-un in Hanoi trying to reach the right deal with him. We know what that looks like. It's denuclearization by North Korea in exchange for a very bright economic future. The North Koreans weren't there. We're obviously going to watch what they do, but that's what the president's trying to get to.
If they are reassembling, will they use it right away, or can they use it right away?
Well, I don't think we really are in a position to say at this stage. Obviously, we have a lot of ways of getting information. We're going to study this situation carefully. As the president said, it would be very, very disappointing if they were taking this direction.
John, I heard that there was a last-minute push by Kim Jong-un to keep you guys at the table. How would you characterize what he tried to do when it was clear you were walking out?
Well, I don't think there was any last-minute push. There were extensive discussions. I think the president made our position very clear. Kim Jong-un had presented a formula that the North Koreans have tried before. It was unsatisfactory. You know, what they'd like is relief from the economic sanctions.
Sure.
And compliance with what we want, which is full denuclearization, comes later. That's been a path prior North Korean regimes have used to get a lifeline for their economy.
So there was none at the end. Hey, don't go anywhere. What about this? There was no last nuance to their offer.
Not that I saw, that's for sure.
John, there was some serious reporting that said that the two sides were far apart even before the president left the United States, and he felt like he would be able to persuade Chairman Kim, given his personal relationship. Is that accurate?
Well, I think the North Koreans obviously would like to give up as little of their nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons and ballistic missile programs as they could in exchange for very broad sanctions relief, and that's basically what they asked for. The president wasn't buying it. He said, look, we want a big deal. We want the big deal that will give North Korea a bright future, but which results in complete denuclearization. So the president's obviously open to talking again. We'll see when that might be scheduled or how it would work out. But he thinks the deal is there if North Korea is prepared to look at the big picture.
Okay, we'll wait and see if there'll be a third summit. Let's go down to Venezuela. The vice president said he wants to revoke 77 visas that were held by or are held by.
Glad he was to be an American now that he was back on our soil. And this is the 20th hostage that President Trump has been able to get out of captivity without ever paying anything, unlike the Obama administration paying to get the Iranian hostage, some of the Iranian hostages released. The president also called Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed of the United Arab Emirates to thank him for the UAE's efforts to get Mr. Birch out. But with Mr. Birch, his son Ahmed, there in the Oval Office, it was really, really great.
Now, John, don't complain about the weather. You could have been in here on the couch in air conditioning, but you chose to go to the White House. That was your decision, all right?
That's it. I'm ready for it.
All right, I hope so.
All right.
Thank you. Great to see you.
Glad to be with you.
All right, let's hand it over to Jill. You know, has some headlines for us. Hey, Jill.
That's right. Good morning to you. And let's start with this. President Trump is scrapping an Obama-era rule on drone strikes. The president signing an executive order ending a policy that required us to report the number of civilian deaths caused by drones. Previously, intelligence officials had to publish an annual report on deadly airstrikes outside of war zones. Critics of the Obama-era policy said it interfered with counterterrorism efforts. Facebook wants to make its site a little less social. CEO Mark Zuckerberg says the company is focusing more on private conversations and less on publicly shared posts. In a blog post, he promises end-to-end encryption on Facebook and announced plans to merge messaging systems for Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram. The changes come amid several information sharing scandals. A Hero bus driver jumps into action when a little boy starts choking on the school bus. Carolyn Gehring rushing to save second grader Alan Lovegreen. She gave him the Heimlich maneuver, possibly saving his life.
I just couldn't breathe. I was scared.
I saw like terror in his face. He was, and I turned around and he goes, "Alan's choking."
Alan's brother, who first got the driver's attention, called her the hero of the day. An incredible moment at a high school hockey game. The recording of the national anthem stopped, and this happened next. The Massachusetts teacher who shot the video says the crowd never skipped a beat. He calls it a real special moment.
That's beautiful. The person who was supposed to sing didn't show up.
The recording stopped.
The recording stopped. Wow.
They were already singing along with it. I bet a lot of them.
Seems like we're having so many problems.
I know.
You know, with the national anthem.
But the crowd always
Why
comes
can't life
through.
be easy, Brian?
I know, it's unbelievable. I thought we had the anthem down.
Oh, we've got it down. All right. Meanwhile, remember the homeless guy and the couple Well, remember the homeless guy
Scam.
supposedly gave her his last $20, and then they were charged in that massive GoFundMe scam. Well, a big update on the case. We think you got to hear it, and it is coming up, and they are going to prison somewhere.
Plus, if you have little ones, forget K through 13.
Good morning and welcome back. Some quick headlines now. A man posing as a DEA agent is busted after he pulls over a real federal agent. Alex Taylor is accused of using his Volkswagen Jetta to make unauthorized traffic stops. The DEA says he had fake badges, handcuffs, along with guns and meth. And this is a really, really good boy. Canine Max posing with a stash of drugs and weapons he helped get off the street. The Texas police dog sniffing out drugs and helping officers secure a warrant to search a home. 2 people are under arrest. Someone get Max a treat.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Jillian, forget K through 12. How about K through 13? Our next guest is calling for an optional 13th year of school to help prepare Boston students for college. This after a recent report by the Boston Globe newspaper that found that 1/4 of the city's valedictorians between 2005 and 2007 failed to finish college within 6 years. Amazing. So could an extra year help? Joining us right now, Boston City Councilor at Large, Michael Flaherty, joins us from Boston. Michael, good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve. Thanks for having me.
So explain how this 13th year would work.
Well, obviously, as you mentioned, it'll be an optional program. If you think about Boston, we boast of having the best colleges and universities in the world. We also recognize that we're home to 16,000 high school kids that attend the Boston Public Schools. The problem is not enough of our kids are getting into those schools, and the ones that do aren't able to stay in. And so that's a problem. So year 13, very much similar to a PG, which it's not a new phenomenon. A lot of people know it. When I went to school, it was for kids that wanted to enhance their opportunity to get into Division I schools for sports, get faster, get stronger, et cetera. So this would be a 1-year intense college prep course load program to get those math scores and English scores up, help them with their SATs, so that they can get into these great schools that call Boston their home. At the same time, many of these schools provide scholarship opportunities for Boston Public School kids, but unfortunately, we're not even meeting the threshold to get these kids into the schools. So this is really about helping kids and helping families.
Yeah, and Michael, when you look, nearly half of Boston students who enter college do not graduate within 6 years. Obviously, the 13th year would be great, and it sounds terrific. But how are you going to pay for it?
So we have in Boston what's called the pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes. Our colleges, our hospitals, our nonprofits opt in to a payment program. We're hoping that one of Boston's finest colleges, universities want to partner with us. Also, we're looking at a lot of the companies that have been founded here or the ones that are coming here, GE and Amazon, et cetera. Maybe they would be willing to sponsor and partner this program as well, because they're coming here to tap into the intellectual capital.
Sure.
We want to make sure that economic opportunity trickles out to the neighborhoods.
Well, it's a great town. One of my kids went to college at Boston College. But explain.
Me too.
Listen, it's a good school. Go Eagles. Let's back up just a bit. How does payment in lieu of taxes work there?
So college and universities, you know, they don't pay taxes because they're considered to be nonprofit institutions. So they opt in and they voluntarily cut a check basically to the city in lieu of services. So if you just think about whether it's 911 or trash collection, public safety, public works, et cetera, we're getting pennies on the dollar from our university. So this will be a great opportunity for them to partner with us, give back to the great city that hosts them. Well,
the great city of Boston, their public schools put out this statement. Michael, Boston Public Schools officials are reviewing the hearing order. We are always open to ideas on how to provide better outcomes for the 55,000 students we serve, and we are happy to listen to feedback from elected officials and community members to engage in a productive dialogue. I would imagine that parents are for this, but once again, it's how do we pay for it?
There's a lot of parents are, and this is going to be, it's an optional program. It's going to be the student with the parents, with the guidance counselor, with the school administrator to see if it's a great fit. And it's not just about getting kids into these great schools. It's also in the trades, particularly those that have a strong math requirement. This is, again, another year of kids that are, this is for highly motivated kids. This is for kids that are serious about going to one of these great institutions or want to make sure that they're prepared for the global economy.
Well, let's see how it goes. Keep us posted on this. Michael Flaherty, Boston City Councilor. Sir, thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Have a great day.
You as well. All right. Meanwhile, about 10 minutes before the top of the hour, why are some Democrats launching so many investigations into President Trump?
We have to make sure that this is not a dictatorship and that the rule of law is respected.
Deep red states, which is why we're seeing some reaction like this. Jana says on Twitter, well, no offense to Taylor, but she was pretty vocal in the Tennessee Senate election, too. Didn't work out so well. Might want to focus on the music. Gary says, notice to all performers, shut up and sing. We don't care about your opinions on politics. People pay to see you sing, not to listen to your political opinions. And another Twitter user says, good. She needs to use her influence to highlight what's going on in this country. And she has a huge platform and loyal fans. So, so people feel all sorts of ways about this. I guess it really does depend on your own personal political opinions. And voter registration surged after she first got political.
Do you think it hurts her, though? Certain people who used to like her, who don't agree with her politically?
Sure. Yeah, it could hurt her, but I don't think it will overall affect, her albums from selling out and her concerts. Yeah.
The president's got a pretty good relationship with Tim Cook, right?
Yeah, that's right. So the president...
He did.
Well, so Tim Cook was at the White House yesterday. The president is very good at giving nicknames, but it looks like this one may have been a bit of an accident. Watch this.
We have so many companies coming in. People like Tim, you're expanding all over and doing things that I really wanted you to do right from the beginning. I used to say, Tim, you got to start doing it over here, and you really have. I mean, you've really put a big investment in our country. We appreciate it very much, Tim Apple.
Tim Apple.
That's right. Yeah, the president's got a lot on his mind.
That's right. And finally...
You can cook apples.
The people who were involved with the homeless guy down in the Philly area with the GoFundMe scam, it sounds like they have pled guilty and they might go to prison.
Yeah, so 3 people involved in the story, a homeless man named Johnny Bobbitt, a woman named Kate McClure, and her boyfriend. The homeless man, Johnny Bobbitt, Kate McClure, they both pleaded guilty to scamming 14,000 people out of $400,000. She faces 20 years in prison. He faces 10. The boyfriend faces lesser charges. This is a big deal. And that story, I remember reporting on that story when it was a heartwarming story.
Right, and GoFundMe gave all the money back.
It's always heartwarming to see you, Carly. Meanwhile, in the final hour, please stay.
Has become the center of the Democrat Party. This is proof of it.
The man charged with punching a conservative at UC Berkeley pleads not guilty.
This particular guy is obviously a wacko. He's a thug. The issue is the left redefining speech as violence.
I'm going to fight this. Keep the faith, and we'll win. With his attitude, he's at very least, studies have shown, going to stay.
Steve, good morning. House Homeland Security Committee Chairman Benny Thompson said, look, there's no emergency at the border, calling it non-existent. But Secretary Nielsen painted a very different picture for them.
The projections are dire. At the current pace, we are on track to encounter close to 1 million illegal aliens at our southern border this year. Our capacity is already severely restrained, but these increases will overwhelm the system entirely. This is not a manufactured crisis. This is truly an emergency.
But that didn't stop him from grilling her.
Are we still using cages?
CBP never purposely put a child in a cage if you need a cage like this.
Purposely or whatever, are we putting children in cages as of today?
Children are processed at the border facility stations that you've been at. Some of the
And I've seen the cages. I just want you to admit that the cages exist.
Sir, they're not cages.
Now, after the hearing, I confronted Chairman Thompson regarding his non-emergency assertion. He visited the border in El Paso at the same time that I was across in Juarez. Here's what he had to say.
I look at what the numbers say. At that time, the numbers were down. If we would do what the system requires to be done, then I think we can accommodate it. But when we create situations where the law doesn't allow for it to be created, it's a manufactured crisis.
Well, here's the problem with that. He says he looks at the numbers. Well, here are the numbers. In fact, according to CBP, numbers released yesterday, apprehensions for family units in El Paso up 1,689% this time compared to last year. And I pressed him on that through the numbers in his face and said, look, what did you see? What did they tell you? He just walked away and wouldn't answer the question. Meanwhile, guys, in Calexico, another caravan of about 400 migrants arrived yesterday by train.
It's right there on the border.
On the Beast.
All right.
They go on the Beast, goes right through Mexico, no problem.
All right, Griff, thank you very much. Yesterday, Mike Rogers, the ranking member of that committee, he's a Republican from Alabama. He said, "We never argued about whether borders worked until Donald Trump wanted them. This is not rocket science." But it's all part of the narrative the Republicans are putting out. There's problems down there. The president needs wall funding, and he needs, if he's not going to get it through Congress the regular way, he's going to do the emergency declaration.
I was watching Fox and Friends First earlier this morning, preparing for the show.
It's a good show.
Yeah, it's a great show. Brandy Johnson, she was on, it was a couple, they live down there on the border. They own a ranch, I believe it's in Texas. And she said that they have kids in order to walk around on their property because they have 7 miles of their property that's totally open without any barriers. She said they have to take weapons. They have to be aware of their surroundings. They go in that area only during the daylight. Listen to this.
In our area, we're not seeing the asylum seekers. We're actually seeing more of the criminal activity.
Yeah.
And so we have what they call drive-throughs, which is the vehicles crossing. We have the foot traffic, which is what Border Patrol would their terminology. And then I don't know, our kids are seeing it and we're seeing it. It's really hard to hear people say that we're making this up. It's very disheartening, and if you don't live it, it's just I don't even know how to express just the disappointment and what's going on.
Yeah, and they're frustrated. Unaccompanied minor apprehensions, I'm not saying they're a physical threat, but they're up 55%. Is that a crisis? Overall, apprehensions are up 335% from a year ago. Does that seem like a crisis? They had 80,000 people come through last month. Is that a crisis? They expect a surge to come in the fall. How many more people are we supposed to absorb coming here illegally before someone admits that we are overburdened with our social security net? We're taking in entire populations of other countries.
Well, Brian, also another crisis. We're all parents here. You probably at home are a parent or have a heart for kids. These kids, Kristen Nielsen said yesterday, 10 years old and up, they're all getting pregnancy tests because these little kids, the girls, exactly, when they're coming up to the southern border, things are happening to these little kids and all the women.
Mark Morgan,
a lot of them.
Mark Morgan was a Border Patrol chief for President Obama. When he looks at the opposition in Congress, he sees it simply as the Democrats trying to deny Donald Trump a win. Watch. He was with us earlier.
How did the secretary start off her testimony? There's a national emergency or crisis, and then she backed it up with facts. The commissioner did the same thing. The current chief, Carla Provost, did the same thing. The facts are overwhelming. How many more do you need? Congress could fix the majority of the issue in 15 minutes, but they refuse to. It's identity politics. President Trump is right. It's that simple.
Right.
We have a crisis.
Right.
Let's see what Congress does.
Yeah, they got to do something because 63% of illegal crossings can be stopped, according to our Border Patrol chief, just by changing some laws. So without offense, without high-tech equipment, just by changing the laws and reversing the magnet. Meanwhile, at 7 minutes after the top of the hour, do you see what's happening among the Democrats? It is chaos. It is bedlam. They can't agree on the simplest thing. For example, that anti-Semitism is wrong. And it's all stemmed from a Minneapolis congresswoman named Ilhan Omar and her continuing tweets and comments that are anti-Israeli and anti-Semitic.
Well, and she has apologized twice, but it was her comments last week where she was talking about loyalty to Israel that got everybody inflamed, and that's when the Congress, and it was a bipartisan thing, they were outraged, and the Democratic leadership said, you know what, we're going to come up with an anti-Semitic resolution, non-binding, but then there was pushback from Omar's allies in Congress saying you cannot single her out. Well, there are a lot of questions about her feelings. Why does she keep saying things like this? Peter Doocy, a young correspondent who used to live upstairs at our house, was up on Capitol Hill yesterday, and he followed Congresswoman Omar for about 5 minutes, trying to get her to comment on all the things in the news. How did he do? Watch.
Congresswoman Omar, it seems like there's some confusion among your colleagues. Are you anti-Semitic? Congresswoman, can I just quickly ask, would you support this resolution condemning anti-Semitism? My only question, would you support the resolution condemning anti-Semitism and other forms of bigotry? Congresswoman, would you support the resolution condemning anti-Semitism?
Yeah.
Congresswoman, would you support the resolution condemning all forms of bigotry?
It's so bizarre. She just keeps walking and doesn't even talk to him. Many are wondering what's going on in the Democratic Party. Is Nancy Pelosi, is she losing control? There was a meeting with rank and file Democrats yesterday, and people said that there was growing dissent. There's anger. She had to put down, she held up the microphone and she said, well, if you are not going to listen to me, I'm done talking. And she put down the microphone and she walked out. We asked Michelle Malkin about it, and she said that Nancy Pelosi is losing some of her power within the Democratic Party. Listen.
Nancy Pelosi fears the radical left, and the fringe has become the center of the Democrat Party. This is proof of it. I think if Nancy Pelosi continues down this path, karma is going to come back at her, because this Ilhan Omar is obviously beyond control. And if you think that she's going to be reined in after this, you're kidding yourself.
No, she's not, and she won't be. And I'll tell you, the Nancy Pelosi wanted the House. She's showing she can't handle the House.
Correct.
She does not. They have some resolutions that they had passed that Hakeem Jeffries, also amongst leadership, wanted to talk about yesterday. Every question was about this. How come you can't get on the same page with your anti-Semitic non-binding resolution? Then they wanted to expand it and just be against anything bad. And then I thought that, what's his name? Jonah Goldberg had a great point last night. They said when Black Lives Matter came out and they said, surround me and support Black Lives Matter. And one candidate came out, O'Malley, and said, I think all lives matter. They said, well, wait a second. That's not what the issue is. So the issue here is anti-Semitism. It's not not fighting against Islamophobia or anything race-related. It is about this in particular. Expanding it is not on the table.
Well, let's see if they even do come up with a resolution. Right now, it doesn't look like. Side note, I just looked it up on Ticketmaster. Hamilton tickets for tonight, $224.
Right,
they've gone down.
I know how it ends, and I would still see it again.
Okay, good enough.
It's sad. It's touching. The second half of it is so good, too.
All right.
I would just fall asleep during it because
I'll just give it away. He loses the duel.
Oh, I'll be darned. In Hoboken. Yeah. All right, 8:11 now here in New York City.
I've never seen it. Thanks, Brian.
Right.
Well, history will tell you.
All right, let's talk about this. Embattled R&B singer R. Kelly facing new allegations he assaulted a 13-year-old girl. The claims coming on the same day of his explosive interview, denying similar accusations from other women.
So they're lying on you. That's your explanation. They're lying on you. Absolutely.
I'm fighting for my life. Y'all killing me with this.
R. Kelly has pleaded not guilty to sex assault charges. He is now in custody in Chicago for failing to pay more than $160,000 in child support. A strict anti-abortion rule is one step closer to reality in Georgia. A House panel passing a controversial bill to ban abortions once a fetal heartbeat is detected. A heartbeat can typically be found 6 weeks into a pregnancy before many women even know they're expecting. Right now, Georgia allows women to get an abortion up to their 20th week of pregnancy. The State House will vote on the measure. Well, this is in the bizarre category. A Philadelphia restaurant is sparking an uproar on social media by selling this, a pound cake cheesesteak. Joe's Steaks is using 2 slices of Stock's Bakery pound cake to mix 2 of the city's favorite foods. The reactions are hilarious. Garrett says not all heroes wear capes, others not so sure. Another person tweeting, quote, no, no, no. And someone said, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Those are probably better separate.
Who wants cheese and meat on their pound cake? They're totally separate.
Just the pound cake by itself.
Do you know that restaurant?
I've heard.
It's not one of the big ones.
Yeah. Okay. And Philly's not known for pound cake, if I can just.
All right. Last month out at UC Berkeley, there was an assault on a young man who was working with, that is to say, Turning Point USA, trying to recruit people. And then out of nowhere, that guy, Zachary Greenberg, came up. They didn't know his identity for the longest time. He cursed at Hayden Williams, called him a racist, and then struck him while students stood by and watched. And that is Zachary Greenberg, who has been charged with all sorts of things.
It's amazing, but it took him 3 weeks to 2 weeks to find out who he was, even though he had a full shot of his face and he'd been seen on campus before. Now we find out about his expanded criminal record.
We all wanted to know, like, why would he just walk up to him? What makes someone that angry? Come on, we can all have political views, but do you have to take it this far? You can disagree and have a debate, but not violence. Harmeet Dillon was on last night, and she was talking about, she's representing Hayden Williams. She was telling us more about this guy, Zach Greenberg. Listen.
Mr. Greenberg, over the past couple of years, has had numerous incidents where he's filed restraining orders against his roommates in multiple group houses. His roommates have put in evidence that has been more believable and believed by the court that none of those incidents happened. He's also had a restraining order filed against him by a former roommate. He has filed several lawsuits against landlords for charges that were later dismissed by the court and found not to be valid. Almost a dozen lawsuits that I've uncovered that this man is involved in.
Michael Knowles, who is a commentator on this program occasionally, and he's got a radio show, he was with us. He tours campuses all over the country, and this is a problem where conservatives are being targeted coast to coast. Watch.
The trouble for the Democrats and for the left is that he is emblematic of a larger problem. This isn't the first time this has happened at Berkeley. This is a problem all over the country. The issue is the left redefining speech as violence. What do you do to this form of violence? Either you
turn
censor
it off.
Yeah, you turn it off. It justifies violence against conservatives. President Trump made a key aspect of his campaign stopping political correctness, stopping censorship, stopping violence for speech. And if we don't get that fixed, we're not going to fix any of our other political problems.
President's not going to fund you. You're not going to get a check unless you let all people speak.
Replacing speech with violence.
And Hayden, by the way, was great at CPAC over the weekend. I watched him. The president said, hey, come on up, say a few words. He was great. Worst economic crisis in history.
Well, look, the Maduro regime has been ripping off the Venezuelan people since it's been in power. We want a peaceful transfer of power from Maduro to Juan Guaido. So we think increased pressure against Maduro and his clique is the way to help the Venezuelan opposition get that peaceful transition of power.
Wow, our next guest has been spotlighting the crisis.
Countries are involved in this, not just the U.S. 54 countries, including all of Latin America, basically.
But they still have the guns, and they stop you from giving humanitarian aid. But you do say that they only have days left of food and energy?
Yeah, so Venezuela, because they keep stealing all this money, they are about to hit an epic humanitarian crisis we haven't seen in this hemisphere, and they haven't faced there. They probably have less than a week of gasoline left. Now, you know, so there's an Indian company out there that's helping them, and of course the Russians, and that's very unfortunate that they keep giving these guys a lifeline. But they have just a few days of gasoline left, and they have only a few days of food left. The humanitarian crisis is real, and when people ask me why should we care, 10% of Venezuela's population has abandoned the country in the last 5 years. Another 2 million people are going to leave this year, and it is creating it threatens to collapse Colombia and potentially Peru and Ecuador as well. Nobody can handle taking in 1.5 million people like that the way Colombia already has done. So this is a regional crisis that ultimately is going to impact us.
And Senator, real quick about what's going on the border. You were in the gang to try to solve this in a bipartisan way. Now we're in a situation where almost everybody agrees it's a humanitarian disaster and drugs are flowing there. Are you going to back the president's initiative to use emergency action at the border?
Yeah, so the president has 3 ways he wants to pay for it. The first 2 are not problematic at all. He wants to use the anti-drug money. He wants to use the forfeiture fund. And if he takes those 2 funds and the money that we already appropriated in the budget that even the Democrats agreed to, he gets to 5.7. He can do it that way, and that's what I think he should do. The third one is the one that's problematic because it actually goes after military construction. And I'm just telling you, we just can't afford to cut back funding. For example, in Florida, we've got a bunch of military facilities. Some of them are crumbling. We cannot let them crumble. So I hope we can avoid using that third pot of money. That's the one that's complicated and problematic because the president can get all the money he needs, the $5.7 billion, from the first 2 pots, and those are not even controversial. I mean, the Democrats don't like it because they don't believe there's a border crisis, but there is. And you saw the numbers yesterday. Even the New York Times yesterday reported that the numbers are out of control. And you've got children and families. I mean, just from a humanitarian standpoint, we should care about what's happening there.
The New York Times wrote it as humanitarian. Has anyone on the other side reached out to you, even below the radar, and said, let's try to work on something together, or no?
No, because, they just think, now they're just trapped. I mean, a lot of them are trapped. They can't. They step out of line. Look what's happening in the House now with the whole anti-Semitism thing, and all of a sudden everybody is running for the hills on it, and they don't want to take a vote on it because there's this new radical element that's gone into the Democratic Party that's moved them away from supporting Israel and makes it impossible for them to admit there's a crisis on the border.
Senator Marco Rubio, a very busy guy these days. Thanks so much for joining us, Senator.
Thank you very much.
All right, straight ahead. Democratic Chairman Jerry Nadler defending all of those investigations into President Trump.
We have to make sure that this is not a dictatorship and that the rule of law.
In a minute, but first, here he is a couple of days ago talking about dictators.
We're simply exercising our oversight jurisdiction, and he's not. He doesn't understand, or he's not willing to concede to Congress that we have an oversight jurisdiction. We have to. You've had 2 years of sustained attacks by an administration of the nature that we haven't seen probably in a century or more against the free press, against the courts, against the law enforcement administrations, against freedom of speech. But we have to make sure that this is not a dictatorship and that the rule of law is respected.
All right, so they're going to be talking to a lot of you. We got the list of all the people, all the organizations.
Guys, these people are so desperate. I mean, look at him, right? They are so desperate. The country has never done better. The economy is the best it's ever been, all right? I mean, the Democrats don't have a platform. Their Russia hoax has fallen on its face. They investigated and spent how much taxpayer money on Russia, and they got, what, absolutely nowhere. You know, Senate Judiciary Committee the other day came out, or Senate Intelligence Committee, and said the whole thing, there's nothing there, right? I think the Mueller report's going to say the exact same thing. So they're silently trying to sidestep that. They're trying to make up these other things. They're subpoenaing everybody under the sun.
Including you. What did they ask for?
Hey, guys, it's a joke. So many of the questions. Please give me your transcripts of all the conversations you've had with Vladimir Putin. Me and my buddy Vladimir Putin, we obviously do a lot of...
You ever talked to Vladimir Putin?
Of course not. Guys, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. They're so desperate. They don't have a party. They're superstars. AOC have literally fallen flat on themselves. They cost New York, right here, 25,000 high-paying jobs. All right? The Green New Deal...
Amazon, you mean?
I'm sorry, Amazon.
Yeah.
The Green New Deal costs, would have cost $93 trillion. Right? That's not exactly going to work. It means that there's no cars, there's no planes, there's no boats, there's no cows.
You'd have to rebuild every Trump tower.
And guys, this is the leadership of the Democratic Party. So what do? They harass. My father says it every single day. It's presidential harassment. And just imagine how productive our government could be if people actually tried to work together. And they don't want to do that. They know they're losing. They know they're losing on just about every front.
Who used to work with the organization, the election committee, and has been around you guys, said, "Yeah, I got the request. I'm not giving documents. I don't think I'm going to show up." Are you showing up, Eric?
Listen, I don't blame the guy, to tell you the truth, because all they're trying to do, they're trying to harass. They're trying to waste time. They take these young kids, right? They send so many documents to them. They have to hire lawyers. It practically bankrupts these kids. I mean, there's a real physical toll that it takes on people. Listen, we're big boys and girls. We can handle it. We can lawyer up. We can fight. We have the platform in order to fight. But you take some of these young kids, they get these things. They don't have those resources. They don't have those lawyers. They don't have the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend in legal defense, and they did nothing wrong. And so I don't blame these Caputos for going out and saying, I'm not doing it, especially when so many people know all they're trying to do is get people to perjure themselves. I mean, that's all these people are trying to do, and it's a witch hunt, and it's sad because it actually hurts this country.
What do you think about Joe Biden? He might be announcing next month that he's running for president.
Listen, you're going to run on the policies of the Obama administration, where you had the weakest economic growth in history since the Great Depression. You were giving $150 billion to Iran, a country that hates our guts. I mean, where do you want me to stop? You had no border security. I mean,
800,000 people die in Syria.
This country, I mean, there were points under the Obama administration where you had 10+% unemployment. What, right now we have, 4% unemployment? Mm-hmm. If you want to run Biden against my father, I think it's going to be an easy victory, because all you need to do is line up stats, not sound bites, but quantifiable stats, and he beats him all day long.
The President Obama said in Canada yesterday, my team never experienced the scandal of the Trump administration. We never had mistakes of integrity.
And they never had mistakes of integrity, so you never had the IRS, spying on conservatives. You never did that. I mean, give me a break. They had more integrity problems than probably any administration. What they were doing to conservatives, the way the NSA was looking at civilians. You want to talk about integrity problems? They had a lot of integrity problems.
Let's talk a little bit about what's going on up on Capitol Hill, because the new Congresswoman, Omar, she's been in a lot of trouble for anti-Semitic comments. Last week, she was talking about loyalty to Israel. It looked like the Democrats were on the verge of passing, or at least voting on, a non-binding resolution condemning anti-Semitism. But now it looks like there's so much pressure and the party is fractured, they're not going to do that. Nancy Pelosi has been requested to kick her off of the committee she's on, but she has said she's staying on the committees. What does it say about Nancy Pelosi's judgment?
Listen, I think it says, quite frankly, a lot. The Democrats have always said, we're the party of the Jewish people. Yet my father was the one who moved the the embassy to Jerusalem. Quite frankly, we've had a better relationship with Israel than we've ever had before. The Israelis love my father. I mean, I talk to people all the time who go to Israel, and the love of my father is unbelievable. He finally has backed Israel, and then within the Democratic Party, they don't even know whether to condemn these comments, and it's really, really shocking.
Eric, what does it say about the Democratic Party when you look at Nancy Pelosi losing control yesterday in that meeting and ending up putting the microphone down and stepping out? Is the Democratic Party going to support him? Everyone wanted Joe Biden in the race, and if you looked at the polls, he was the one that many people said could beat your dad possibly.
You know what it says? It says they're radical. The problem is the Democratic Party is no longer the party of JFK, right? This is a radical party. Look at these people. Look at AOC costing this city 25,000 jobs. I mean, look at the Green New Deal. Look at this Israel stance. Look
celebrating
third
term abortions.
Look at